This might have come from the middle school. This might have just been the middle school, had a whole bunch of stuff a few years ago. Do they still?
I thought they did.
So I think they have the school split.
Hey, I met with Mudd today. Came in
Yeah,
and met.
no. I don't think it was run by the PTO.
So he was like,
It was.
oh,
We good?
I wanted to meet with you about
When the main office was
possibility.
When you walk.
Good evening, everybody. If I could call the meeting to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. If I could get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll motion.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. If I could, I'll do a moment of silence for Diana Lenhart, food service worker for 19 years, and Tim Edmond, school bus driver for transportation, who had worked for the district since 2017. Okay, thank you. We've got a couple members that need to take their oath of office. Can't get out of it now. We'll go, who do you want first, Pearl? Allison.
You first. Thank you. I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the office of Board of Education member.
I have shorts on.
Yeah, I know, but like once in a while, it's more cold.
Okay, Lori. To both of you.
A year less than me. We're about the same time because I took a leave for a year and a half.
Okay, I will make a motion that to move into a public hearing for district-wide school safety plan for 2024-25 portion of the board meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Calabufo, who will then... Oh, Mrs. Ladd, thanks.
I'm back. I have, 2 months off the whole year that I don't have to make a presentation? I just put together a little one, we've seen it before, just to kind of formalize the fact that we have to have an open public hearing regarding the district safety plan. There are actually 5 pieces to this. These are all in the board packet for tonight for your approval and the action items. The first one is the document called School District Safety Plan. This is a comprehensive multi-hazard school safety plan that covers all the buildings in the district. It was developed by the district-wide safety committee many years ago, and which included different members, and it changes year by year, but representatives of all the different stakeholder groups. It came into existence in 2000. It was done under the SAVE legislation back in the day to prevent and minimize the effects of violent incidents and emergencies, and coordinate schools and school districts with our local authorities, EMS, ambulance, fire, police. Basically, the requirements are kind of broken down between district-wide safety plans and building-level plans. The district-wide safety plan includes the code of conduct, the public emergency employment plan, the response protocols, and there's actually a new one added a couple months ago that is the workplace violence plan. The building-level plans are their basic plans of what they're doing during various events. This district-wide plan has to be adopted at a public hearing. That's why we're doing this tonight. It's available ahead of time. Pearl puts the ad in the paper that there's an open public hearing for it. And then we post it to the district's website. None of this information is confidential. All of the building level information is confidential. We have 30 days by, I think it's October 1st, to get the building level plans submitted into the portal. They basically are done by the principals of the buildings. They put together their building-specific teams, decide who's doing what in the event of any type of emergency, and we file it into the portal with the state of New York. Everything is basically on the website except for building-level pieces of it. It addresses anything and everything from emergency responses to management at the building level of what we're going to do in an emergency, how we will respond, who's corresponding with who's going to communicate. And again, in the buildings, it's also represented by the various district safety stakeholders. They have to be amended by September 1st of each year. The district safety committee meets about 4 times a year, and if there is any amendments that need to be done, it's reviewed through the district level safety committee. Changes come up through the building level committees to the district safety committee. It's posted and does not contain confidential information. There was some new amendments that just came out effective this July 31st, so what, 4 days ago, 5 days ago. None of these are really anything that's in the district-wide plan, because the district-wide plan is broad, not specific to incidents or any specific items, but it's introducing pretty much everything that's in here we already have. Trauma and trauma-informed are the terms that are being introduced, and so the big part of it is during the drills, they must be announced and informed so that no trauma is experienced by any of the students in the buildings.
So let me jump- can I just jump into that for a second?
Parents will be notified now ahead of time when there's going to be a lockdown.
So that excludes fire drills for
Correct.
obvious reasons. So we don't do it during fire drills because the state recognizes that would be putting a whole bunch of students and staff in harm's way, because to let somebody know when we're going to have fire drills would be basically letting them know where there's hundreds of students in certain spots outside that would be obvious targets. For the other part, for the one that you have to give, we always did in our district. That goes back several years ago when we had board members legitimately bring up concerns saying that, look, if my daughter locked herself in a bathroom and heard that that it wasn't a drill, that it, basically what looks like an active shooter situation, that they were going to text them, and we would have parents converging on the school, even though you tell them not to do that, because of all those things that they've seen in social media and whatnot, where bad things have happened, especially in other states. So the only drill that we will do, and what we're going to do is, I'd like to have it more than just the morning of. I had already, we're going to put something out again. I believe we did. We're doing it again to our administrators, letting them know, and we talked about this during our admin retreat this past week, where we said there's going to be at least 24 hours before. If you do it where you give it like a week's notice, well, for some parents, they could forget. I want you to remind them the day before. So for the majority of our buildings, it's going to be the day before, the morning. So it's not going to be like 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday that this is going to happen Wednesday, because some of our parents, they don't subscribe to the text messages. They just get the email alerts. But we want to be able to give them enough time that they see this, because we do have a lot of students that have experienced significant trauma, and we want to be able to give parents the opportunity to have conversations with their kids. You're going to be having this drill tomorrow and whatnot. So that is the only one that we let parents know in advance. We do not do that blasting it out for fire drills, as I said, for obvious safety reasons.
And also included in this, those full-scale exercises that districts have done throughout the years. We've done them ourselves. Even the DWI training one, they're now considered trauma-inducing. So if any students they cannot happen during the school day anymore, and if any students are going to be a part of it, they must have actual written permission from their parents. Threat assessment teams do exist, and we do already include them in our plans. The floor maps and area maps, we have them in our plans. The early dismissal drills, we end up doing every year because we always have a leave early because of snow. And bus drivers and monitors, they are on our teams, but we'll make a better effort to make sure they're on our teams every year, because that's not always the case. District safety meets like at 4 o'clock quarterly, and that's just not a great time to get bus drivers or monitors on. The transportation director has always been a part of it. Also, part of the safety plan is the code of conduct. This is not new. It's also in there for your approval. It basically is a maintenance of order on school property plan. It includes all the school functions after school, and it does include anything that happens on buses. It's again reviewed annually, available on the district website. In there, any changes that have been made in these documents are highlighted in yellow. In the code of conduct, there's an added page or an added section about AI because that's becoming a big thing these days. And there's a little change on the dress code. Everything else is just updates from other years to the new things that had happened. Last year, and maybe the year before, we were required to do a public employer emergency plan, obviously due to the COVID incident. This basically it happened in 2000 and covers any operations in the event of a declared public health emergency, including up to communicable diseases. Again, must identify everything that we're going to do, be posted on the district website. Right now, part of this 30-day plan, or what am I saying, public hearing. The pandemic planning piece came into effect in 21. The safety plans now have to include this piece, and it is in there for your approval. And it's not new, it's been here for 2 years now, or 3. And I don't believe there's any changes to that one this year. The workplace violence prevention program is new this year. It went into effect in September of 23, and it became effective January of this year. It covers public employers now, including public school districts. Basically, everything in this plan is currently being done by school districts in other areas, so they never used to include us in this legislation that technically isn't new, but it's new for school districts. Dave Maestri basically took the lead on this with Tom and put together the plan. We did the workplace risk evaluation. We're providing the annual training. It will be part of our system, our training every year. And basically, the process inside it, we have added into, I shouldn't have turned that, we've added it into the district safety committee. Because if anybody is injured and it happens to be due to a violence incident, it's still going to be reported on the same document, brought to the same committee, assessed by us, and then whatever action needs to be followed will be taken there. So all of these documents are tonight here for your approval. And does anybody have any questions?
It's important to know, so, because people have asked about it in the past, the one thing she referenced about the dress code change, do you remember when we had a situation where you had like the Central Square trap team? So it was the Red Hawk with the rifle, that's their logo. So now they are allowed to wear that. So what we put in there was, built upon what the policy that Erie 1 had was, like glorifying, guns and whatnot. Now, if it is affiliated with an actual, recognized team that we recognize, and that is one of them. We also have a rifle team, so if they were to wear T-shirts, they would be allowed to do so, and it's not violating the code of conduct. So that's the one reference that she made.
Yeah. It's on, the school dress code is in the code of conduct, is item number 4. We just added clothing or hats that are affiliated with either the district rifle team or the Central Square Club trap team are permitted. We try to be broad. All right, it's a public hearing, so public is allowed to speak. If you have any questions. No? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. Can I get a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
All motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Now can I get a motion to open the regular meeting?
All motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? And then, Pearl, do we don't have any blue cards? No? I don't think we have much of a public here. We'll move on to item D, special presentations to the board. Aaron, that's you.
My wife has the pink one.
Is Sophia excited about going to school? 2 weeks. I know, soon. I harass her at the ice cream parlor all the time when I see her there.
She was ready.
Hello, everyone. I brought some friends with me tonight. So we are going to do our end-of-year data presentation. And the reason I have these guys behind me is because really the only building that I can confidently speak to is Millard Hawk, because that's where I was from the end of January through the end of the school year. So if there are questions about certain buildings, these 3 people can answer them for their respective buildings, and myself for Millard Hawk. So we're going to get started. So this is the format I'm using this year because this is what we've done. Next year I am going to switch it up. I haven't really decided how, but I got to think of something new. So this is where our kindergarten team left off, and you've got middle of the year to end of the year data there. You guys know what these, we have new people. So I'm going to do a quick run through for our new student board member and then our new board member. So I'm going to go up there, though, so I'll take this with me. Okay, so this is middle of the year, this is end of the year. The red are the kids that are significantly below level, yellow is at risk, green is on, blue is above. These are the numbers, so we had 136 students who were below level, significantly below level, at the middle of the year. District-wide, so this is the district-wide kindergarten data. At the end of this was beginning of the year, middle of the year we had 63. So the kids came in, this is where they were, put them in front of teachers, 63% of them, or 63 students district-wide continued to be off level. This is now end of year, so we had 66 because you take the 63 and the other kids that were, although it's really supposed to be 65, I'm not sure where the 66 came from. But then you've got, a move, right. So then middle of the year, end of the year, we ended up with 20 students. So, and then you can see these are the same kids. So of these 66 students who were middle of the year, 20 of them stayed, 16 went to yellow. 21 of them moved to on level and 9 of them moved to above level. And this is the composite, which takes into account all of those subsets up there. So that's kind of what all these colors mean. And they're the same way each grade level. So the same colors will be. So that's where our kindergarten ended up. District-wide, we ended up with 86% of our kindergarten kids moving from kindergarten to first grade that were on level. Typically, you want 85. That's, when you look at an RTI pyramid or a response to intervention pyramid, you've got 85% of your students who are typically on level, and then those students who need support, and then the top tier at the top is, the 2-3% that need, that require special education services. So then we break it down into the different specific subsets. So phoneme segmentation is where we really spend our focus at kindergarten. It's that phonemic awareness, being able to hear sounds, manipulate sounds, and this is how it's broken down by building. So again, that top number is where the students were at middle of the year, and then those same students where they are, the numbers at the bottom are end of the year.
This is for kindergarten. Can you go back one slide? So then why is there no red under the green column, for instance? But if you go to the next, is it a different test?
This is composite, so this is taking into all of account. So this is the first kind of checkpoint that we look at, and then we get into the different skills. This is one of the main skills that we look at because this is your foundation.
I had noted, as you know, I'm usually looking
Yeah.
for the regression. It's, you know, obviously it's easy to see
Yep.
the progression, but like in green, there's red, that greens that become
Yes.
red, there's a blue that becomes red, and there wasn't any of those on the prior slide, so I was just.
Correct, yep, because this is just the focus on this skill. And what sometimes happens is, one, the standard moves, and I've talked about that, but the other thing is sometimes the kids, when they are green and blue, specifically blue, they've already mastered this, so they're beyond it. So sometimes when now you're asking them to come back and just break, it's harder for them because they're past it. So, so you do see some of that, but then typically what we hope is that that's just an anomaly with that one student down there at Millard Hawk. And when you get to the nonsense word fluency, he or she is reading words.
So Aaron, I don't know when would be a good time to ask. Could you talk about if they went to pre-K, how much better in kindergarten they do if they don't? Is it something that you track? Is it something that you look at?
I do
You
look
have a
at
gut
it.
feeling for it?
I do look at it. This would be really the only sub-test that I can compare, and that's going to be one of my, when I was looking at some of the pieces of the literacy briefs that we just did at the retreat, that's one of the notes I made to myself is we look at kindergarten, we track the imagination library, the kids who have text in front of them. I take a look at it, I meet with pre-K, but I don't, that's something I have to do better at is here are the kids who were in pre-K, here's how they're doing in kindergarten, especially on this one, because that's, like I said, the foundation, and that's the big area that even pre-K works on is the Haggerty and the phonological awareness. So that's one of my personal goals for this year, so I can keep you updated on that.
I think it would be important for two aspects, right? You have one to sell the cost of it,
Mm-hmm.
to say, hey, you know, this is our program, it's worth it, this is money well spent. And then two, it's also, well, I don't know if I really want my child to go to
Right.
pre-K, right? I want to be home with me one more year. So it could be a sell of, you know, well, they'll get a jump, it'll be a little bit better,
Right.
other thing.
I
So-
can tell you that at kindergarten screening, the kids that go through pre-K score better on those kindergarten screening tests, and all the teachers who are at those different stations, they can
They can pick 'em out,
differentiate the
right?
kids between
Sure.
who attended and who didn't. So I do know that.
And that was always my understanding of it. So as you try and sell, you know, gosh, we're all out in the public. I know people, oh my gosh, it's called, but it's money well spent,
Yep.
right? Pre-K.
And that's a conversation we're gonna have to start with pre-K and looking at, once all the buildings are kind of back to their home court, looking at full day versus half day. So that's a conversation that Tom and I have kind of started a little bit, and there's pros and cons to each, right? Like right now, we can service 36 students half day in each one of our buildings. You go full day, it's only 18.
Right.
But then they're with us long, so that's a conversation that we're gonna be having,
Well, because again, 9 years ago, it wasn't a sentiment that was shared among all board members. It was thought, well, that's not required at UPK. So we've come a long way in I don't want to say educating people because they may take that the wrong way, but to really sharing what you just said. We see a lot of the behaviors for students that have never been part of UPK, the structure, the rigor of being in school even for a half day, than just being babysat by an aunt, uncle, or grandparent. So anecdotally, qualitatively, we totally see the benefit of it.
And I can verify that. I volunteered in Kelly Foster's kindergarten class for 3 years, and you can pick up
Absolutely.
who is at it,
Yep.
pre-K, and who hasn't.
And that was the only other, two comments on that, similar to what Steve said is, and Tom touched on, I think it'd be interesting at kindergarten, but I also think it'd be interesting if we put so much value, reasonably, we put a lot of value into what they're doing in third grade, right? And it would be interesting to see, how that played out by the
Yeah, the
time they were in
cohorts.
third grade. But more so, and I mean, I think it goes to student success, this is the behavior piece. I mean, the kids are already used to being in a classroom, they're not getting used to that as they're
Right.
trying also to learn how to read and everything else. So, but I don't think, we are always we have a waiting list every year for pre-K, right?
For many buildings,
Right,
yep.
and so in terms of having opportunity, I think it's more the money piece, it's money well spent going forward.
Oh, for sure.
Is there data available that supports the difference between private pre-K or our internal program?
No, we don't, I don't know as if there's many, because we don't really, we have got Sunny Days.
Right.
And then we have Head Start, which isn't private, but Sunny Days is. I met with both Head Start and Sunny Days, not this past year, the year before, and I'm set to do it again this year. And actually Kathy Landers just reached out to me too, that she's working with somebody in Onondaga County. And Sunny Days and Head Start both switched to Hagerty, so that, it was kind of the
They're aligning with
conversation
us.
as to what we're doing here.
Okay.
They can't necessarily adopt our CKLA in that program, but they did add the Hagerty piece, so they know what our focus is.
Okay.
So that they do have, a baseline for those kids. But in terms of, I could look and see if in their registration, if it indicates if they went to Sunny Days to see
Okay.
what the comparison is, but I do know that they did make that change, so it was a meeting well spent.
I also think a big piece that often gets left out, not with me, because my youngest was on the autism spectrum, still is, and the services that he got when he was 2, 3, where in Oswego County, and she touched upon the number of service providers, and that's on the county responsibility. We've done everything we can to help. We talked about Casey Sechner's role was to be able to service, but it's nowhere near the number of services that are in Onondaga County. So we have many students that have been identified that early intervention is huge, that, at ESM, they've got Park Hill, 2, 3, 4 years old. They're getting all of these services, where in this county, it's no fault to any of us, but the services just aren't there. Whether that's a priority or whatnot, that's more of a legislative conversation. But the one thing that I really I'm going to continue to push for is the advocacy for all of those families in our county that they know that their child's been identified 2, 3, and 4 years old that aren't able to get those services by the county because those services aren't there. So that's something when we are at school boards, I know that's often talked about there. So what legislatively can we get done to guarantee that those services are there for the county? That's huge.
So then this is where we really this is where the students know their letters and sounds and can, in kindergarten, we're still focused on that. So you'll hear me, this is correct letter sound. So they can look at a nonsense word, a word that is not a real word, and sound out each of the sounds and then blend it together. So if they do that, they get credit for it. If they can just look at it and automatically read those sounds, they get much more credit because they're not having to slow down and sound everything out. So in kindergarten, this is why that's the slide where we shift to first grade is we look at the words read correctly because we want them to ultimately be able to look at a word, not have to sound it out and read it because that's reading, right? So this is in kindergarten where the kids were, and Kira and I do not know why there's no data available for that one, for Hastings, because there were 7 students that were still red. My logic is, when I was kind of trying to dig in, is that there were none, but then it would show you none there. So I'm not sure what that is, but, because they don't have it. Any questions on this? So then overall, when you look at the different breakdown, composite 1, composite 2, composite 3, so you can see all of our kids came in when you take all of those sub-skills, all kind of, kids are learning, and we do this very early on in the school year, and then the shift in how they grow from benchmark to benchmark. So composite 1 is done the first week in school. Composite 2 is January, usually when we come back off of Christmas break. And then Composite 3 is the end of the year, usually like towards the beginning of June. So growth made. So that just sets them off on a good note going into first grade. So again, composite, and you'll see oral reading fluency was added to this one because now mid-year they start to get a passage where they have to read how many words can they read in a minute. So it's a little bit, you see the rigor increase in applying those reading skills. So 86% of our kids overall at the end of the year are going into second grade. Again, 85 is, the baseline where you kind of want all your kids to be, at least. We start there. Many of the individual buildings behind me have their own building goals are set a little bit higher at that point, but overall as a district, that's where we are. So here's that shift to words read correctly up there. So this is where they look at a nonsense word and just read it. So our kids are doing well with this. And it's hard because you get to those kids that are reading and they're reading passages and they're reading books, and now you're asking them to read a word that doesn't make sense. And again, so that's a hard shift to make. But our kids were able to maintain, if they were blue middle of the year, they were able to maintain that. So that's, it's getting there is one thing, staying there is another, right? So they were able to maintain that. So that's a good thing. And then you can see that green area, more kids moved to the blue side too. And then our first grade composite. So it was interesting. One of our school psychs in the district puts together all of the data for us, and he put together a 3-year trend. And I didn't want to go it because it would have been really long, but I could talk about it for a long time. So Steve, you can come over and we can have coffee. But the 3-year trend shows that the efforts and the work that we're doing is paying off, because you can see our kids started in green. Where in kindergarten they came in yellow, our kids are starting in green. And the number of kids that are where they need to be at each benchmark increases, especially in our primary, which is the primary focus. We're still working behind me and with our consultants on shifting that into the oral reading fluency piece, not just the foundational skills, because this is foundational. That oral reading fluency is really where you get into the text and the application part, and that really just comes with students reading more books in their hand, not being read to, and we're trying to kill that a little bit, but we're making headway. So, in second grade, I do not have a composite for second grade because there are kids, not every kid is represented in the composite because kids test out. So if they get to that nonsense word fluency or the words read correctly part and they hit a certain score, they test out, so they don't get counted into the composite. So I didn't even put that in here. This is where we really put our focus on second grade, because they've got, by the end of second grade, they have the code. They have the basic code. They've got their advanced consonants, advanced vowels, digraphs, all that kind of stuff. And now we're really putting it into practice in the application part. So this is where we've got to get those kids reading a little bit more often in decodable text for the kids who are in the red and yellow. And then for the kids that are in the blue and the green, reading different kinds of text, because the more you read, the better you get. So that's kind of our push right now, is what are those other stories that we all have in our libraries that we use when we were guided reading that are there and are good, very good stories that we can use in books that the kids who can get the words off the page should be reading and having conversation about. So that's where we're really trying to push that. But and you have some anomalies, right? Like we pulled up a few kids. That one student at Hastings, we know we were able to drill down before they closed this off to see who that student was, and it's a student who tends to have some behavior. So if it was a day and he just didn't feel like playing. He didn't play. So, same thing with the one at Millard Hawk. So you have those days too, and do you redo it? Like, that's the debate, right? Do you redo it? And it's not really valid then because they've already seen the passage, because it's only one passage that you have, so. But we definitely have more kids, you know, staying down there in that blue area, and they're not dipping down into the yellow, which is good. So here's second grade. And again, you see again, ORF and maze. So the maze is where they're given a closed passage and they have to make meaning of what they're reading, and they're given 3 choices of what the word could possibly be in there. And a lot of times what the kids will do is it'll make sense in that sentence, the word, but then as they get through the passage a little bit more, they don't go back to say, oh yeah, no, that doesn't really make sense. So that's understanding what you're reading and knowing what the vocabulary word is underneath, or the grammar piece, 2, 2, and 2, there, and there. What do those mean? So working on that language aspect of things. And then third grade, again, is ORF. That's where that second grade shift goes. Same thing with third. And this is getting kids in text. And I cannot stress that enough. That's what we are stressing with the teachers. That just has to happen. Fourth. So this has been our struggling group the last few years, and we have kind of identified the shift from middle of the year. The middle of the year passage is about being honest. Kids hear that all the time, where the end of the year passage is, while it's about camping, there's a lot of different situational pieces that happen in the text. So it's a more complex text, but the kids, because fourth grade, that has kind of been our focus, they have worked to give kids more. So they do a poetry unit. They do nonfiction. They have more nonfiction and fiction in their curriculum. So they're doing more, and it has been why are they doing this in fourth grade? They work so hard. But our results are better. Kids were able to maintain and hold because this has been a grade level that we've really focused on. Now we need to expand it a little bit more.
Erin, when you say this group, do you mean fourth grade the
grade.
year, or this group?
This
of fourth?
grade level, fourth
Okay.
grade, that's the one that's got that harder. I have emailed Dibbles, but it's not just a New York State test, to get some answers because we've analyzed it. They did not get back to me.
Like when last year you used the example when it was a passage that said, at the end of the day of camping, they retired back to their cabin. And the kids are like, well, no, my grandfather retired.
Right.
That's from his job.
It's just
Like,
not their language. They don't use
Correct.
that vocabulary, so, yeah. And then fifth grade, again, reading. And then there's the district. Do you guys have any?
Could you talk about, because this reading program's been in for 5-6 years?
Where we focused on the science of reading?
Right, well, you changed, right, then the whole county
Yep,
went
science,
to,
yep.
right, went to a new reading program and a new way to go, right? Because we went the first year, teachers got instructed on it, and then we implemented it. So we're in year, what, 5, you think?
Because it was right before COVID started.
Right.
And that was where our initial training happened, and then COVID hit, and our teachers, they did a very, very good job continuing with that, but you still have those kids that didn't get on.
I'd say 5 years. It was the Oswego County Literacy.
Yeah, the
Initiative.
Oswego County Literacy thing, so,
Yeah, because, so,
yeah.
what do you think,
So like I said,
right?
that data for the foundational skills. Now it is really that oral reading fluency and the language part. So there's two sides to Scarborough's rope. There's the word knowledge, the decoding part, where it's the phonological awareness, the sounds and all of that. But then there's the other side of it, which is the language, vocabulary, that side of it. We have done a big focus down here on this part. We're getting more staff trained with the second part of our letters training so that they understand here, but you've got to have 1 through 4 before you get 5 through 8. So when we went 1 through 4, we prioritized and we started with our primary teachers because they're the ones where the foundational skills are taught. Once everybody got 1 through 4 for our knowledge building and how you teach it, we then switched our focus. So the teachers that teach 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in middle school they're getting the 5 through 8 now, they started it and we're working our way back, so primary teachers will get it second. Foundation-wise, I think we are solid, and even with